You might have noticed a specific style popping up more and more. It's where you've got these bold, saturated colors with warm tones that stand out against more subdued, desaturated colors. In recent years, a new trend is emerging, one that uses contrast of saturation as its secret ingredient. And no, we're not talking about teal and orange separation, but a moody, atmospheric look that's become a signature of blockbusters like Dune, The Batman, and Babylon. And this style is making waves not just in Hollywood, but also among Lightroom users and Instagram artists who have coined the term moody tones to describe the look. So today we're gonna dive into this world of dark, moody tone color grading. We'll break it down, figure out how it works, and I'll show you how to add this awesome look to your videos. So you ready? Let's get after it.
All my life I've barely spoken. Your words have been so broken. I've been under your hypnosis. Cell phone became your brother. Internet replaced your mother.
Now that we've set the scene, let's get our hands dirty. We'll dive into this look with 7 clear, actionable steps that you can follow no matter what editing software you're using. For those of you on Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro, you'll find that the steps are pretty much the same. For DaVinci Resolve, there's a slight variation that you'll want to pay close attention to. And I'm also going to show you a really cool way to achieve this effect effortlessly with Cinema Grade, our color grading plugin that works with all 3 platforms. Before starting, as always, make sure to have a good base correction, meaning it looks the same way as it did to the naked eye as when it was filmed. This look also works the best or is the most interesting on shots where there's foliage and other colors that sit opposite warm colors on the color wheel, because when you see this look, it really grabs attention in a highly stylized way. Our first step is to make a copy of the corrected clip and drag it directly above so it lines up perfectly. Now, you might be wondering why we're doing this. Well, it's because in exploring all the different ways to create this look, I found that blending the 2 clips together gives the quickest, most awe-inspiring results. For DaVinci Resolve, you'll add a layer mixer and arrange the nodes like so. The second step is to change the blending mode of the top clip to soft light. And this adds the light and dark contrast similar to an S-curve, but giving us richer blacks and better roll-off in the highlights. This is the first key part to the look. For Resolve, the same operation is to go to the layer mixer and change the composite mode to soft light. This next step is optional, but if you should find that you need to adjust the exposure in the shadows to restore some detail, you'll do that to the bottom clip in Premiere or Final Cut and to the top node in Resolve. Now, we do want a fair amount of contrast as part of the look, so generally I just leave it like so or as is, but this is where you can fine tune it if you need to. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. For the 4th step on the bottom clip, we'll go to the hue versus sat curve. And with the eyedropper, we'll click over the skin to isolate it on the curve. We'll then spread out the points a little, and then drag the outer points down, leaving the center alone until we reduce all the colors except for our oranges that include the skin tones. Another reason I prefer this method of using blending modes is that it maintains saturation in the deepest tones so that they are subdued but still naturalistic. Let me toggle this adjustment on and off so you can see the difference. For Resolve, you'll do this step in the top node, but not take the outer points quite to 0 as its adjustments are a bit stronger. Now we're starting to get the moody tone look. By the way, if you want to get this same clip, I'll include a link for it in the description below. It's available for download from ArtGrid, and if you don't already have a subscription, not to worry, you can download a free watermark version. I'm not affiliated or sponsored by them, I just know that having the same footage to work with can really reinforce a topic. Okay? So the 5th step is to add some density in the skin tones. So in the bottom clip, we'll go to the hue versus luma curve, isolate the skin with the eyedropper, and pull down subtly on the center point until we get that really nice richness in the skin. Now, we don't want to go too extreme here as that will break the image, and we want to spread out the outer points so we have some nice feathering. But man, this is starting to look like $1,000,000. For Resolve, it's in the top node where we'll add this same density, but feel free to pull down even more. For the 6th step, we want to add the same kind of density to the foliage. Switching to the top clip, we'll sample an area for the foliage in the hue versus luma curve and pull down to increase the density in the foliage for a dramatic effect. If you're curious to know why we jumped to the top clip, it's because the foliage is in the shadows, which the top clip mostly affects, and the bottom clip mostly affects the highlights, which also includes our skin tones. All right, for Resolve, we're gonna stay in the top node, but you'll notice that the same operation is quite limited in its impact. So we're gonna have to do something a bit different. Instead, we're gonna go to the color warper, switch to chroma and luma, switch the grid from 6 points to 8 points, turn on the auto lock, and sample the foliage with the eyedropper. We now have a point to pull down on to increase the density in the foliage. You'll see this has a dramatic effect. To touch things off, we'll go to the blur panel and add just a touch of radius blur to give it a dreamy mood effect. In Premiere and Final Cut, you'll add the Gaussian blur effect to the top clip and bring it up to about 30 if you're in Premiere. Let's take a look at where we started and with our Moody dark tone. We can then copy these same settings to the next clip and we get the same beautiful Moody tone on this wider shot. Now, how about an interior scene and scenes with other tones like blue? Well, I've repeated the same 7 steps on this interior scene, with the difference being that I pulled down on the luma for the blues in his shirt, increasing the density. And in a nod to teal and orange, I swung the trace of his blue shirt more towards teal in the hue versus hue curve. Look at how clean and stylistic this looks with the warm dark tones and the dreamlike softening we get on the hard edges in the highlights. If you're curious to know how this looks different in Cinema Grade, we'll apply it to an original version of this same clip. An advantage of Cinema Grade right off the bat is that it works the same way in all 3 softwares, so it's a great integration to your workflow. I'll add contrast to the shot with the contrast tool and dragging up. Then switch to the pivot tool to fine-tune the contrast, bringing out more detail in the highlights. Now this is where things get exciting. Going to the vectors tool, I'll zero out the saturation for all the colors except for red and yellow. I did all of this manually with the sliders, but a really unique part of Cinema Grade is where you're able to click and grade directly in the viewer. Here's what that looks like. To bring down the density in the skin tones, I'll just simply click directly on an area of the skin, and while holding down the Command key or Control if you're on Windows, I'll drag down to bring down the luma, thus increasing the density in the skin and getting that film-like look. Going to the red vector and then the yellow, you'll see how this changes the luma when I click and drag. Make sense? Okay, I think that looks good right about there. For the shirt, I'll do the same by clicking and dragging down. And I'll pivot the color towards teal by clicking and dragging up without holding down a modifier. This looks amazing as teal. By the way, the instructions for what the key modifiers do is right here. For instance, I could restore the color in the shirt by holding down the Shift key and dragging up. Whoa, that's intense and kind of cool, but I'll drag it back down to stay with our Moody dark tone look. I am noticing quite a bit of saturation in the shadow areas, so switching to selective saturation, you're able to simply pull down on the saturation on the dark areas by clicking in those areas and dragging down. You'll see that change in the shadow slider of saturation. It's basically a luma versus sat function to clean up our blacks. To finish it off, go to LUTs and apply the Cinelook LUT. It's too strong at first, so I'll dial it back. And voila, here's the grade toggled on and off. Mwah, que bella. I'll click apply, and back in the editor, whether it's in Premiere, Final Cut, or Resolve, we can compare the results. Here's the original with no grading, our look using the built-in tools, and the Moody dark tone look with Cinema Grade. It has a certain clean look in the highlights, and overall, it's an iconic look. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to learn more about Cinema Grade and duplicating the methods shown here, I'll include a link for it in the description below. We'll also make the Moody dark tone look available as a LUT pack exclusive to Cinema Grade, so you don't have to jump through all of these hoops. Just send us an email to support@cinemagrade.com and we'll provide you with a purchase link. And we're also running a sale on Cinema Grade where you can get 20% off for a limited time using coupon code Moody20 at checkout. So consider subscribing if you're not already, and if you have any questions about anything shown here, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments. Until next time, enjoy the Moody dark tone look.